Year by year, we sing, O little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie. Only these days, Bethlehem is not still, and maybe it never was. But today, it certainly is not. At Christmas time, it is full of parades and celebration, extending from now and through Orthodox Christmas at the beginning of January, all the way to Armenian Christmas that is celebrated on the 19th of January. And sometimes there might be 3 services happening simultaneously in 3 different languages in the Church of the Nativity. So it is not still. The other reason that Bethlehem is not still is because it is full of, if not outright conflict, reminders of conflict on every side. Pilgrims must cross a military checkpoint to get into the Palestinian territory where Bethlehem is. An 8-meter-high wall surrounds the community. Chain-link fences and mushrooming Israeli settlements take all the space around they can. And this year, Palestinian Christians from the Gaza Strip have been told by Israel that they will not be allowed to travel through Israel to Bethlehem to visit family in the West Bank or participate in any Bethlehem religious pilgrimages. So in many ways, Bethlehem is sort of held hostage by the ongoing conflict between the government leaders of Israel and Palestine, and in particular, the power wielded through violence by fanatical followers of Islam, Judaism, and, yes, Christianity. And in the area around Israel, through the Middle East, conflict continues to be deep and wide. We know that if we watch the news. Many of us are familiar with the plight of refugees leaving violence in Syria. The Bakr family, who are now in Portage, came via Turkey. The Al-Halak family, who are now here, spent years in a refugee camp in Lebanon. And in, in Egypt, Christian churches have been targeted by bombings, claimed by the Islamic State, and the danger there only appears to be growing. So Bethlehem, and the Middle East in general, is worlds apart from the one we describe in our Christmas pageants and in our storytelling traditions. But should it be? If the scripture reading we heard today should tell us something, it is that in the first Christmas story, everyone did not live happily ever after. Today we heard part of the Christmas story as it is told in Matthew, and political and religious conflict is right there in the story. There's a star, there's a prophecy, and then there are some strangers who come from the east, Assyria perhaps, or Persia, the area we now know as Iran. And they follow the star and head to the palace to bring gifts for this new king. But the prophecy of a new king is bad news for the old king, called Herod the Great by our history textbooks. Now you might be surprised to know that Herod didn't hate Jewish people. In fact, he tried to gain their favor in general. He supported the synagogues. He was known to reimburse taxes and supply free grain to the people during drought. He rebuilt the temple in Jerusalem beyond what it was in Solomon's time. He also built theaters and stadiums and fortifications to defend their ever-expanding territory. Herod was known for being good for the economy. But he wasn't Jewish, so he was never fully accepted by the Jewish nation as their rightful leader. And he did not like that. Still, Herod was a pretty good political survivor. When a civil war broke out in Rome between Mark Antony and Octavian, Herod was first on Antony's side and his ally Cleopatra from Egypt. And then when Octavian defeated Antony and Cleopatra in 31 BCE, Herod saw the wind, or felt the wind blowing, and immediately switched sides and convinced Octavian of his loyalty. And so, following his victory, Octavian returned to Rome, where the Roman Senate made him supreme military leader and gave him the honorary title of Augustus, exalted one. And under the patronage of Octavian, now known as Caesar Augustus, Herod's position as king of the Jews was secure. And Herod would prove to be a loyal subject to his Roman overlords, maintaining the order in Israel and protecting the western flank of the Roman Empire. But Herod had some issues. He had a lot of paranoia, and he constantly feared conspiracy. So he executed his wife when he suspected she was plotting against him. 3 of his sons, another wife, and his mother-in-law met the same fate when they too were suspected of conspiracy. So it is not surprising to hear that when his new friends from the east did not spy for him, he was certain that there was another conspiracy at work. And he ordered the killing of all boys under the age of 2. How else would he secure his throne? This is the world into which Jesus was born. This is the world that was waiting for a Messiah, because all was clearly not how it should be. This is the world in which common people were hoping that God would send a new king who would save them. And then Jesus was born. Jesus, who spent his life saying that the way the world tries to fix things is not the way that God works. That Herod's way is not God's way. And for those who are caught in the midst of all the fighting, who are the helpless pawns in the political players' games, well, don't believe it when the powers that be tell you that God is on their side. Because, Jesus said, God is with you. God is with you and works not through might, but through love. I don't know about you, but I feel like this is still a message our world needs right here and right now. In fact, I think it is a better message, it is better news for the world in which we live than the one that we sometimes get. As my colleague John Dolph said the other night, when we treat Christmas as if it's a Hallmark movie. See, when Christmas is a fairy tale, it only exists in the land of make-believe, and it makes no real difference to the lives that we live. But when Christmas can happen in the real world, then the hope and the promise it brings is for the real world and for real lives. You know, my favorite line from the hymn, O Little Town of Bethlehem, and the one I think we get right when we sing it, is the hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. The hope that Jesus brought to frightened people was that there was something more powerful than Herod or Caesar. I think that's still true. That there is something more powerful than wealth or weapons. And in the story, it starts with a vulnerable and helpless baby, born still today, where wealth or weapons wouldn't even think to look. And I kind of like how the traditions of Christmas in the Middle East invite us to keep discovering that truth. The nativity scene is what is at the center of all of their celebrations. There's another one too. In Lebanon and Syria and Jordan and Palestine and Israel, among Arab Christians, is the feast day of St. Barbara. That's actually when they start planting all of those seeds. She's variously believed to have lived in Lebanon or Egypt or Turkey, but regardless of where they think she was, she converted to Christianity in about 235 CE, against the wishes of her father, who decided, as punishment, he would just keep her locked in a tower. And one of the legends about her is that at one point she escaped her tower prison, and freshly planted wheat fields miraculously rose up around her, giving her a hiding place from her father. Another one of the legends suggests that the tower that she was in, where she was there, she kept a branch from a cherry tree and she would water it from her own cup. And when she was killed by her own father for refusing to renounce Christianity and for rejecting an arranged marriage, it is said that that cherry branch blossomed. And the people who celebrate St. Barbara in the Middle East remind themselves that Barbara is a symbol of keeping the faith in the midst of persecution and difficulty and tragedy. And so when St. Barbara is celebrated, there's a traditional dessert made from boiled wheat or barley as a reminder of those wheat fields where she hid. And also a reminder of the way that hope grows in the face of death and despair or paper towel. Perhaps it is that tradition that led to the idea of planting those wheat grains or lentils or chickpeas to decorate the nativity scenes with that symbolism. For the promise of Christmas is that hope grows in the places it's not expected to be able to grow. Love is born in those places. And that's where we'll also find the enduring presence of God. Not in a way that lessens the pain or the struggle or erases it, but somehow in a creative defiance of it all. Something will grow there. I think that's another place in the Christmas Carol where we actually get it right. Be born in us today. So, Middle East or Canada, Bethlehem and Portage-la-Prairie, may Christ be born in us this Christmas. Amen.